going on, guys? Coco Podcast. Anthony, thanks for joining us, man.
Appreciate it, man. Glad to have you guys
First
here.
time we meet.
Definitely.
I already pick up great vibes from you, dude. Honestly, we were able to set up everything. We were a little nervous. I was talking to Viraj about it before.
I know you'd asked if you wanted to come over, but we were like, no, we just come to, make the guests feel comfortable where they're comfortable. And you have a beautiful space. So,
appreciate it, man.
Anthony, a little bit, you want to tell the viewers just a little introduction about yourself, just to overlay it, and then we'll get started into your story a little bit.
Man, I'm not good at talking about myself, so this is like the first time I ever get on one of these things. Been in Miami my whole life, went to Christopher Columbus and then graduated from Killian. Thought I was going to be a baseball player, blew out my elbow, had to go the real world route, everything from real estate until getting into insurance in '08 when the market crashed. The funny thing is that my mother told me before I got into real estate was, get into insurance. You don't want to be in this business. No matter what happens in the economy, everyone's going to need insurance. So, us being in my young 20s, being stubborn, not listening to mom, thinking we know best. Not realizing mom knows best. And 3 years after the real estate thing happened, I got into the insurance and then followed that path until where I'm at now, 13 years later, pretty much, since 2008. What is that? Yeah, 14 years.
14 years. And just give like a brief summary of what you're doing basically in the insurance business. Even like some of your highlights from before. I know you had a big exit, not really an exit, but like an exit in a way, a merger.
Yeah. So my story is pretty much like I'm not gonna call it rags to riches because I wasn't in the slums, but I was working at an office, felt like my ceiling was here, limited. It was just turning and burning. Working for what they consider, middle market, standard, they call it standard auto carriers, standard insurance, which is the everyday, like the Progressives, the Allstates, the State Farms. I had bigger dreams, more aspirations. And, when you're in that world, no offense to people who are in the standard markets, you feel more like a used car salesman, order taker. Because there's nothing special. Everyone's price shopping versus, creating relationships and developing a network more than anything else. So I was working at an office, a great office. I learned a lot. They were one of the largest offices in the Southeast on the standard market area. And I just incorporated myself after 2.5 years working for that office. I just incorporated myself. I had $500 to my name, went on my own. I had no idea what errors and omission insurance was, that you needed to have all this stuff in. Then I just started hustling, and the first 2 years was rough. My year one in business, I think I made $4,000. I called a buddy of mine that had has one of the largest home health agencies in Florida at the time. And he's like, man, you'd be a great salesman, come work with me. So I started mirroring him for a little bit, and I'm like, man, if I do these like cold calling, maybe I'll give it. But my whole goal was, when I opened up my business, was I was going to give myself 5 years. And after 5 years, I'll reevaluate where I'm at, whether I close the business down, sell it, or keep it going.
Right.
So year one was rough. After year one, my truck got repossessed.
Damn.
I was still living at home with my mom and living paycheck to paycheck and just worrying, hey, when's that next commission check coming in? Calling my underwriters. Hey, didn't I have money coming in?
And how old were you around this time?
That was 2011. I am 38 now. So what is that?
12 years ago, 26?
I was 26. I was 25, turning 26.
25, turning 26.
Never had a business. I just knew, everyone says I'm very charismatic and I can get along with a lot of people.
Right.
So I just ran with it, man. And, I have a model that I go by, trust the process, like no matter what you do, trust what you set out on. And then whether it fails or not, see it fail or see it succeed. Because the last thing you want to do is sit back and be like, man, if I would have kept going, maybe I would have hit it or had the regrets, So you try not to have, at least on business side, you try to do as much as possible not to have a regret on the path you set forth on. So after my car got repossessed, second year in business, I made $14 grand. So now I'm going up a little bit.
Yeah.
And then I was fortunate enough to get introduced to, I was in a boxing gym. That was like my stress reliever in the boxing gym. And I ran into a buddy of mine that I went to high school with. And we started talking, whatever. He's like, hey, what do you do? I'm like, oh, I'm doing insurance now. He's like, man, you should talk to my dad. I go, why? He's like, my dad does like life insurance for like really wealthy people. I'm like, man, perfect. Like, loop me in. So I had lunch with his dad, and his dad says, look, I'll give you one opportunity. If you do great, then I'll send you all the business. So we had lunch, whatnot, and he dealt mainly with international clients, with an absurd amount of money.
Right.
High net worth families, just creating their estates and life insurance. So he sent me this one guy, and he's still my client to today, 13 years later, has one of the largest Ferrari collections, considerably stacks up there next to, between the United States, Spain, Asia, Brazil, whatnot. Saved him a ton of money, and that saved me. Then he sent me another guy from another family in the oil business. And he pretty much helped me stay afloat. And then I got another manufacturing business here in Florida out of Doral. And then, the rest was just history. You do good by one or two people in that world, you start networking with everyone else. And, fast forward, to this year, January, I sold the business. It was more of a merger now with a large company out of New York. And it was bittersweet because, I always had plans on selling, but never thought it would actually happen the way it happened, But you just have to trust the process again and just ride with it. Everything in your life happens for a reason. Yeah. That's the way I look at it. So.
And how many years did you have the business until you sold it?
I started in 2011.
So from there on.
And really it wasn't until like 2016 where it started taking off. And, one of the things that I was saying is like, a lot of people, they spend money on marketing and all this crazy stuff. And while the marketing works is, the one thing that separated me, I feel, from a lot of these, competitors, right, is, my personability. Yeah. Right. There's just how there's 1,000 insurance agents, 1,000 attorneys, 1,000, realtors, you name it. People do business with people they like. Yep. You buy something from people like, and in my world, it's all relationship based. In the world that I deal with those clients, there's only 4 or 5 carriers competing for that business. Yep. And every broker in my world offers those 5 carriers. So what separates you from the other broker? And, I had to fake it to make it seem like I had this huge, enormous shop and clients, but I was the CEO, the CFO, the claims adjuster, you name it,
One man shop. So those first 5 years from 2011 to 2016, was that the time you said, I'm going to give it 5 years and then I'm going to see where I'm at?
No, when I opened 2011.
2011.
I told myself I was going to give it 5 years and see where I'm at.
Was interesting you say that because like 2016, which was like the 5th year, was the year you said things started taking off. Did you remember that at that time? Like, were you getting close to that point where like, yo, is this taking off? Is this not taking off? Yeah. What am I doing? Like that 5th year mark, what was that like?
Yeah, I had, I get goosebumps actually thinking about it because it was like an aha moment where I was like, man, when I first started, I said, if I can make $50,000 a year in revenue for 5 years compounded, it'll be in 5 years, I should be around 250 grand. Yeah. And I wasn't at that number, but I was getting close to it. And I saw, you see the tax statements coming in. You're paying more and more taxes. Okay, this is working out. So it happened, and then it wasn't all, it wasn't all like flowers and and sunshine. There was a lot of ups and downs. But and then COVID hit, and then COVID just really took off, like, because everyone was worried about what was happening in the business, and then I was freaking out. Yeah. Because I had clients calling me, wealthy clients telling me, hey, I need to cancel some coverages. I don't know what's going to happen. Right. And so I hear, I have a guy that's worth, $400 million with assets all over the world telling me, hey, I need to cancel some coverage, I need to lower this. And I'm like, if you're thinking that, and these guys are plugged in, when you're in that world, you know you're in an economic level that you're gonna know things happening before the rest of the world happens.
True.
So I'm like freaking out, and then man, in April I get a phone call from a client moving down from New York, and I was like, okay, this is interesting, and business just boomed in 2020. In 2020 we closed more. We closed in 2020 the equivalent of what we did the 3 years prior, because all these people just transplanted from Miami.
Yeah.
I mean, from New York. So that helped me a lot. And then it put me in a position where now I was acquirable.
Yeah.
Because a lot of the brokerages, you know, they rather buy a bigger book of business than a smaller book of business with high premiums, because like myself, I'm considered a small brokerage. I don't have a ton of clients, but I have a lot of high value clients that pay big premiums.
Yeah.
So, you know, you're at the mercy of your client. So you lose one client, that counts for a big chunk of your percentage. So it put me in the level where I needed to be, and, you know, it wasn't as easy as I thought it'd be to sell. I interviewed with, I met with, you know, the big names that everyone knows in the industry that are publicly traded, and then I ended up sitting with Sterling Risk out of New York, and you know, what sold me on him is that we're one of the largest privately owned brokerages in the country. We do about $700 million a year in premiums, and offices all over the world. And I call that guy, he answers the phone. And I text him, he answers the phone. And the reason I sold is because it shows you a lot. That doesn't matter how big you are, how much money you're making, or how successful you are.
Right.
You still got to wake up every day like you're going to lose your business. And that's what he told me. And he's 62 years old, and he still works like if he's going to lose his business. And he doesn't need to. So that I just felt like a natural fit on the drive, and like we both have ambitions.
Yeah.
And that's
even
where
it speaks on the relationship aspect that you mentioned before.
Yeah.
It's a game of relationship, and you feel like the reason you could go with this guy and make this decision with him was because he had a good relationship with you. He was willing to pick up the phone call, willing to message.
Yeah, you don't want to work with, like what you were saying earlier, you don't want to work with someone that you don't really connect with in some way, you know? And what I find really interesting with your story so far is you said you were 25, 26 when you were kind of like, you know, you had like $500 to your name and all this stuff. And one of the main things we always talk about is, you know, I'm 26, you're 27.
Really?
And
Shit, I thought you guys were like, I thought you were in your 30s.
No way.
Oh, wow. Okay.
And that the one thing we always talk about is, you know, being in your mid-20s now is always trying, you know, trying to figure out the path. You know, we're always trying to think ahead and trying to think ahead. And I feel like a lot of people relate to this where they think they're like running out of time.
Exactly.
You know,
to that point.
They're always running out of time. And hearing your story where you're 25, 26 and you think things are not going well at the time, but then, you know, 5 years, anything can happen. You know, you're saying that 5-year jump, even taking the risk of starting something. A lot of people don't even want to start something. Therefore, even if they do start it, like if it's not going well, like, you know, the first 5 years, a lot of people just say, you know what, fuck this. Like, I'm out. Maybe this is not for me. You know,
especially giving something 5 years and being like, I'm not seeing the returns right now. Like, imagine how many people start something. There was a quote I was reading, I think from Jesse, who I would butcher his last name, but he's married to Sarah Blakely, like the lady who does.
He's the speaker, right?
He's like the older, motivational guy. So he says that 90% of people who start their podcasts, they'd never make more than one episode, and so you're really competing against that 10% who continuously keep going. But it's like, I feel like that's a mentality for a lot of people, especially in the generation where, like, with social media and stuff, it's become so easy to see people living a nice lifestyle and being demotivated rather than being inspired or being uplifted and seeing what is possible. And so it's very inspiring to see that, like, you went from you gave something 5 years rather than where we live in a generation where most people wouldn't even give it a year even.
Yeah.
People want that instant gratification.
That instant, like, this is not working for me. I'm going to shift course or move in a different direction.
Right. You could kind of like say that, like, I mean, that goes to I said that when I started, and I wasn't like, I said that, and I kept saying I was stuck to it, but it's like didn't want to give it up. But it goes to show, it's like, it's like what Warren Buffett says. They were interviewing one day, and they asked him one day, he's like, you have a pretty black and white investment strategy.
Yeah.
Why doesn't the rest of the world just follow your strategy? And he goes, because no one wants to get rich slowly. Everyone wants to get rich quickly.
It's true.
And Warren Buffett doesn't do anything sexy. He doesn't do anything out of the norm. He just buys a stock and that he likes, and he sits on it.
Yeah.
And it goes to like, just if you believe in something enough, my point of view is like, if on the whole entrepreneur side, if you believe in something enough that you want to see, that you're willing to risk, your reputation, what you have on it, why are you going to give up? Like, just because one thing fails, I mean, the hardest part of business for me was, I remember I didn't know anything about the high net worth business, and to this day, I'll still say, I don't know shit about the business. I know enough about the business, I'm not an expert, but I know what needs to happen, and I know the clientele that I have, and I know how to operate for them. But I remember I had a client that I was trying to win, and he was a Mexican client, had properties all over Gables Estates and Colorado. It's like the first big client that I was hoping to get. This was in that first year.
Yeah.
So I get all the information. I meet with the investment banker, get all the stuff, blah, 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 and I'm looking at these premiums, and these premiums are huge. I'm like, I haven't seen numbers like this. I'm like, I'm just counting the commission. I'm like, man, 12% on 500, 12% at 500,000. Man, this would be awesome.
Yeah.
And I had a mentor, I loved her to death, and it was Daniela Finch. She passed away suddenly, and I would call her for everything. And she calls me one day. She's like, she was my underwriter, so I sent her the works, and she calls me and says, because I was sending changes, I need this, I need that, I need this, like all these changes. She calls me and she's like, what are you trying to do with this account? I go, honestly, I have no idea, but I'm just trying to close it. She's like, you're going to lose the account, and I'm going to tell you why. And I'm like, why? She's like, they're going to Marsh. There's someone signing over a Marsh record, but I'm going to try to help you. She organized the quote and the presentation in a way that made me look like I was running a Fortune 100 company.
Wow.
And I go to present it to the banker. Banker ignores my calls, ignores my phone calls, ignores everything. I call the client. He's ignoring my calls. I show up to the client's house.
Oh, wow.
This is how hungry I was and like desperate. I show up to the client's house, ring the doorbell, the maid comes out. I'm like, yes, I'm here to see such and such. And they're like, oh, he's not here right now. I go, his car is there. She's like, let me see if he's here. He's like, okay, but he can't see you right now. I'm like, well, I come here, da, da, da. The guy finally walks out, and I tell him my story. He's like, well, you need to speak to my banker. I'm like,
I tried.
Okay. I was like and he walked away.
Yeah.
So I was like, crap, what am I going to do now? The banker's not answering, the client's not answering me. And my underwriter told me that I'm probably going to lose the account. I show up to the banker's office at Morgan Stanley in downtown Miami. I walk up, made it seem like he was expecting me.
Yeah.
And the guy just like flat out goes, sorry, I can't work with you. And I go, why? He's like, no, we have a relationship with Marsh, and we're going to do it with Marsh. So I lost it. But what I learned there is, imitation is the best form of flattery. They essentially got the quotes that I did, copied it over, and they bound it. And I learned real quick how to turn your L's into W's. And I'm glad I learned it then, because if I would have learned it now, if it would have been all wins and you get that big loss, it'd affect you.
Yeah.
So it forced me to like appreciate your losses, because then you realize like, hey, I got to go back, sharpen my tool. Maybe if I would have gotten the quotes earlier, been a little more organized and sending it, maybe it wouldn't have given that opportunity to him to go to another broker. So it's like, it forced me to be spot on with that initial presentation than just like, trailing it in, half-assing it in, because that first impression is what's going to leave on it, right? So if you send in something, if someone reaches out to you to, hey, provide me with something, you come, okay, I'm going to take 2 days to get back to you. You get back to them in a week, and then you get back to them with misinformation or misquoting and stuff like that, they're not, your reputation starts going, you know, you're on the clock.
Yep.
So that showed me that learning how to deal with the losses and the failures. If you're, you know, you just got to keep it moving.
Yeah.
Take your loss, admit it, and just keep it
Push
moving.
forward.
That right there is such a simple way to think, but it's not very common. You know, a lot of people, if they fail, or a lot of people don't even want to admit that they messed up. You know, it's easy to kind of like point the finger and be like, oh, well, I mean, that guy, you know, you could have easily been like, that guy's just an asshole or something. You know, what did I, you know? And that's the way a lot of people can think. And I think it's so important, like what you're saying, to admit, like, hey, you know, I messed up here. What did I do wrong? What could I have done better for the future, you know, to take it as a learning lesson? That's so, I mean, any successful person says that same, they have that same motto,
story,
you know, where you just got to literally just take those L's and make them into, you know, and build on it, you know. That's so key for anything, whether it's in business like what you're doing, whether it's in the creative businesses, which I'm really into, or anything like that. It's like you got to constantly learn how to learn and not only like critique yourself like constructively, but like learn from it, you know.
You know, it's like you know, on the entrepreneur side, is like everyone says, "Oh, you're an entrepreneur." I'm not an entrepreneur. I'm not. I don't consider myself. I think I'm entrepreneurs, like people who change the world.
Yeah.
Right, like Elon Musk.
I feel like it's become popular to say that just because like anybody who opens a drop shipping account nowadays, like
exactly,
I'm an entrepreneur.
Oh, it's like
It sounds sexy. It sounds sexy.
It's gotten so watered down. I think.
CEO.
You know, listen, I call it like, you know, I'm a relationship person. You know, I'm a networker. You know, one of the things I was having this conversation with a friend of mine because he thinks the same way I do. Extremely successful guy. Yeah. And it's like, my mind works differently when I walk into a room versus everyone else, right? So like when people walk into a room, like, and they see people, like, oh my God, the people are beautiful, they're great. Yeah. This is a beautiful room. You know, this is amazing. Like I walk into a room, I meet people, and I'm like, man, how can I add value here? How can I add value? I always like, so one of the things when I opened my agency and my brokerage is like, I didn't want it to be considered, okay, I'm an insurance agent. You know, I didn't even put it under my personal name. A lot of people open up these businesses and they put their name on it. I didn't want my name on it. You know, I wanted my brand, the name of the company, to stand out for itself. And the reason I had named it Worldwide is because I wanted to have an international clientele. Yep. Where eventually my goal was to be able to network with everyone, aside from insurance, like be able to connect people, because in that space, everyone's like, if you're worth $100 million, and there's gonna be somebody you're gonna need something from someone that's also on that same level. So if you become like the best thing you can do, and someone told me this, is there's two things to be successful. I have a client, he told me there's two things to be successful is figure out how to become a center of influence amongst your network, right? Figure out how you can add value aside from the insurance. Insurance is insurance, but what's going to keep you as their agent is being able to provide a center of influence or a point of contact for them. So if they need something, be able to network them. If they're going somewhere, be able to network. Like I have a client that sent a message to a group chat. He's like, hey, anyone ever been to Turks and Caicos? What do I recommend there? And I called him out. I'm like, hey, what do you need? One of my clients owns a bunch of resorts out there, owns half the freaking island.
That's crazy.
I'll loop you in. He's like, when should I go? I go, if you're going, I go towards December, January, best weather. Everyone from Europe goes over there. Awesome. He's like, boom, looped him in.
Wow.
That's the one thing to figure out, like what value you can add. Yeah. Not just trying to sell people things, but like how can you help them? Second thing they told me is find yourself a woman that you can walk into a room, a group of people, and everyone just talks about her in a good way and comes back to you with positive reviews. Those are the two things to being as a successful entrepreneur businessman. Wow. That's your personal life and your network. Like if you have that in line, you know, it'll help you.
You get the advantage.
You get the advantage, right? Because then everyone's like, hey man, who's that? Yeah. Woman or man, whatever it is you're in, like, you know, whatever your partner is as a business owner is that, because that's a reflection of you, right? So who you have by your side is always, and who you hang out with and everything. You know, that saying goes, tell me who you hang out with, I'll tell you who you are.
Yeah.
You know, and tell me, and you tell me who you choose to be your partner and I'll be a reflection of who you are.
It's crazy because you always hear people mention like, you know, pick your partner wisely, but to mention it in a way where when you go out someplace and you get other people come back and they tell you positive reviews about the person, because that's profound.
Yeah.
I've never really heard it like worded that way. Like nobody really mentions like, hey, like
space.
like if you're out and about, people come back and they're like, hey, like had such a beautiful interaction. You have such a, you know, and not from just an aesthetics point of view, but like from, you know, maybe their values, their beliefs, the way that they view life. That's profound.
Yeah, it really is like a reflection of yourself. That's so true. It's like the day you have kids, right? Like how your kids are acting, almost like the person's gonna be. It's a reflection of like the parent, almost. You know.
And then it sounds, and I don't want to make it seem like it's like very vain to be able to say to have a partner that makes you look good, but no, it's like you know, if you want to be in entrepreneurship, you want to be successful, you want to be, you know, what are your peers doing, right?
Yeah.
You got to model their lifestyle. Like try to model their lifestyle within your own means and with what makes you happy.
Yeah.
And if you're trying to navigate a world where you don't care who you have next to you, you're just chasing all these Instagram models, you know, it's going to affect you in your personal life. It's going to affect you in your business, because then now you're just, you know, no one's going to take you serious.
Yeah. We talked a little bit off camera where we had a conversation. We were talking about like, I guess, lifestyle, where people may look at you and be like, oh my God, you have such an amazing lifestyle. And you're like, well, this feels pretty normal to me. I think the reason that it feels normal to you is because that's what you ask of life. You know, you set the standard. You're like, this is how I want to live my life. And other people haven't maybe set that standard, or they don't look at it that way. And they're like, oh my God, it's so amazing. But for you, it feels normal because you're like, this is what I wanted to begin with. You know what I mean? You kind of in tune yourself with that in frequency.
Yeah, it's like, you know, going back on what you're saying about, this lifestyle I live. I mean, I don't think I live a crazy lifestyle. You know, there's people that, I mean, if you look at Instagram as a barrier, you know, there's people on Instagram that live a lifestyle that you still don't know what they do for a living, and they don't know like, how are they on these private jets, right? But it's, you know,
that's true.
I live for experiences. And, you know, my grandfather, before he passed away, always told me, he's like, they could take everything from you, your money and everything, but they can never take away your experiences. Travel and experience life as much as you can. I don't have kids, so I don't have the burden of having, you know, babysitters, you know, school tuition, and, you know, other mouths to feed. So I'm at the benefit of that. Now,
right now,
you know, but life changes daily. So, you know, I live my life, you know, day at a time. I go with the flow. I try not to, you know, say like, oh, if I don't have this by this, you know, it's, you know, my life is over. You know, it was funny with, I think I was like 18, 19 years old at the time. And I was with my uncle and his friend. We were driving a truck. They were talking, we were trying to pick up palm trees in Homestead. And they were talking about money, and they were just like, you know, banter towards the nephew. Like, and I go, yeah, you know, I'm going to retire when I'm 35. 35, that's my plan.
You said that?
Yeah, and they started giving me the nickname 35.
Oh, wow.
And, you know, here I am at 38. I can't retire, but I could live a little more, you know, stress-free, you know, not with the overhead responsibilities that I had, you know, before the exit. But it just creates, you know, when you sell your company and you join another company, it just creates, you know, more headaches, different headaches that you wouldn't typically deal with by not having partners.
100%.
But, you know, it's all about managing your expectations is the way I look at it. You know? And the lifestyle I live is like, you know, I'm not a planner. I just get up and go. That's, you know, I'm all over the place. And, you know, I just did Gumball now, which was a bucket list of mine that I never thought I'd be able to achieve just because of the.
Which is like most of the viewers, they're not gonna know what Gumball is just off of Gumball. So let give like a brief synopsis of what it was, like the experience.
So Vic and I met on Gold Rush Rally.
Yeah.
So he came up to me, and when he came up to me, man, I'm like, is this guy like a hip hop star or something? Because he had some crazy.
I tell him.
Listen. Wait, the way I met him and I got to know him, this story is really crazy because so I went with my cousin on Gold Rush. Now, Gold Rush, for those of you that don't know, is a smaller form of Gumball, which he's going to talk to you about. But Gold Rush is basically a bunch of these entrepreneurs, different people that come from different walks of life. They spend a certain amount of money. They bring their supercars out to whatever their planned trek is, and then you're basically on a road trip with a bunch of these different people from different walks of life. And so my cousin was going an obnoxiously fast amount on the highway, and we literally had pulled off of the exit because a cop was pulling up behind us, and he put the lights on. And it's very common that this happens, but it's also very funny. So as we're getting pulled over, I see this guy that's like, there's a hill, there's a guy peeing, he sees the cop, and he stops peeing, runs in his car, and they zoom off, right? And this, I didn't realize this till after. So we finally got to the destination. Obviously, the cop, when you're on Gold Rush, they kind of know what you're doing, so they kind of let you off easy, but they just tell you, slow it down. Right. So they let us off, and we get to this destination, we get to the spot, we're at dinner that day, and I run into him because he was wearing the same attire. Or maybe it might have been a different attire, but I kind of recognized that it was him. So I walked up to him like, yo, I just want to let you know the funniest thing happened. We were getting pulled over. But I see you run like a half fist. Run into the car, get in the car, zooming off was one of the funniest things. So we went from that moment, we just sat down, we had a conversation. Obviously, like you said, like when you walked in, like the vibes were great. It was the same thing. Like vibes matched. We were all sitting talking for like, I don't know. I remember it was like the second to last night or whatever. And he was like, the first half of the trip was ending, and I was only doing the first half of the trip, and he was also doing first half of the trip. So he's like, I'm leaving tomorrow. So we were just chilling, we were chatting, and that's how I met. That's how we met.
Yeah. So
it's crazy.
So the Gold Rush is like, so it's the American pinnacle of car rallying on the United States side. They do a great production, shout out to Ramina and Pet Fred for putting it together. And it's a great time. It was my first time I ever did a rally. The first time I ever did the rally, I almost flew off a cliff, backed my Ferrari into the side of the mountain, total loss. Like nothing happened to me. Actually, my grandfather, I felt him on, I felt like a sense of peace, knowing when I was in a crash, I felt I had a sense of peace. Nothing happened to me. So that was my first introduction to car rally, and the next year is when I met you. And then did it a couple times, and then I'd always wanted to do Gumball because that's like the oldest one. Next year is going to be the 25th year anniversary. And I just, the videos are crazy, the parties. I was like, man, that's what I want to do. And never had the opportunity to do it until recently. Now I had a client that was doing it, and he backed out of it, and the spot was open, so I jumped in on it, and it was the people you meet, the networking. It's everyone there. Like it's like what I was going back to earlier. Is like I walk into a room, I try to see how I can add value. I meet people there on the rally, and everyone is just like, they don't care where you come from. They just want to hang out with you, talk. We have people, you have princes, you have multi-billionaires, you just meet so many people. And I do a lot of the things that I do because I always do the lifestyle that is perceived that I live. A lot of it, I do it with networking opportunity, right? I try to figure out, how can I network here? How can I, I even told my partners, hey, I'm doing this rally. It's all these people. It's in our world. Maybe I pick up 1-2 clients. Who knows? And I've met some people there that if I do business with them, great. Cool.
If not, it's like
If not, who cares? We have it's a bond that that you create. The same thing with the Gold Rush Rally. It's a bond that you create. They both organizations do a good job of keeping everyone in the loop on their group chats and calling out everyone's birthdays, and whenever everyone's traveling to either a country or a city, they try to link up together. It
becomes a community.
It's a family.
I mean, imagine we're sitting here because of
Gold Rush. The car rally, And
we maybe talked for I want to say at that time we may have talked for a couple hours max, all together. But we were out there for 7 days, and you kind of have this association just because you were like, we went through this experience together.
Exactly.
And it's like we went from
We survived.
We survived.
We
Well,
survived.
yeah, exactly. And you know, for example, we went from Vegas to Arizona to what was it, Santa Fe to Colorado. We did you do like all of these cities, and it's all jam packed with different events, a different place. So you're always doing something with all of these people that have that same passion for life, whether that be being like cars or going fast or just traveling or creating memories, like you said, and building relationships, which I think is huge. And he got to do the Gumball, which is like in Europe. So you go to European cities, you go through like European towns.
Yeah, that was.
I imagine that's even bigger.
That was the what makes it huge over there in Europe is the fans. Like I mean,
that's true.
And it's the European mentality. It's like because you're going to these cities where you're driving through these cities where they're not used to seeing these, $500,000 cars. Like here in the U.S., we're kind of spoiled, right? Like
we see, at least down in Miami for sure.
It's in Miami. We see a $500,000 car every hour, on the hour, whenever you want. Over there, you're driving through like where was it? In Bruges. We were driving through Bruges, which I think is Belgium or France. I forgot. It's Belgium. And my God, there was cameramen in the scorching sun on their elbows on the pavement, just trying to catch an angle of a car coming in.
Wow.
And they're like laying on that scorching hot
pavement
for hours. And I'm like, dude, it's just a car. Like, come on, you can go online and see this. But for them, it's like they never get to see that. Yeah. So it's a fun experience, man. So, I always say to myself, why not, right? 100%. Like, why not? If they invite you to do something or they tell you to do something, like, why not? Like, if you have a valid reason as to why not do it, then don't do it. But
don't do it,
if it's within your means and you can do it, do it. Because at the end of the day, when you die, you can't take it all with you, right? And it's not like I have, unlimited resources, because it's definitely not the case. But, I'm young and I don't have kids, and I know eventually I won't be able to do those things. I tell everyone, travel as much as you can. Yeah. Especially when you're young, try to do those long ass trips that you won't be able to do when you're in your 60s, because your bones will start hurting.
True.
So
that's interesting you say that, because there's a few like YouTubers I watch and stuff. They're all about like finances and stuff like that. They're very wealthy, but like, and one of them recently, I think it was, I don't know if you guys know him, Graham Stephan, Iced Coffee Hour and stuff. And he said something recently that kind of stuck with me. He's all about like save your money, save your money, save your money, and just work. And recently he just came out saying how he's like, man, a part of him kind of regrets not doing certain experiences throughout the journey, like he was so caught up on, like what you were saying earlier, hitting like a number, or hitting like I want to meet this by this date, and he was like, man, there's experiences that he missed out on and stuff, and he's trying to make up for it now. But there's some experiences there's certain things, sometimes it's in that moment alone, and I think that it's very important whether. And that's why I wanted to ask you. Go ahead. Go ahead. I just kind of like throughout your journey, what are things that you in your personal life, right? Like you're working on, you start your business and stuff like that. What would you do outside of that to kind of keep you, I guess, just level-headed? Because I would imagine the stress and stuff is overwhelming. What would
like when you
help
weren't
keep
working
you
on your
grounded?
business? What were some things you were interested in? And I guess more so in the beginning years, or now,
or just all throughout? Because I'm
cool.
sure those things are consistent. I know you mentioned boxing before. And
I mean, like in the beginning years, I couldn't afford to do anything.
Right.
I was working till, I was sending cold emails like at 2 or 3 o'clock in the morning, 4 o'clock in the morning, just sample quotes, just trying to get people's engagement to respond back to me. And sometimes it worked, sometimes it didn't. One of the things that saved me a lot was my stubbornness and I guess call it my poor choice making when I was in my 20s, early 20s, when I was doing the real estate side. Man, I would get every check I would get. I'd be going to Macy's, buying a Lacoste shirt, and then I'd be going to the clubs, buying tables. Buying tables. And then when the market crashed in 2008, I mean, my mom had to bail me out, like pay off a lot of the stuff and everything. So I was like, I bought all those tables and everything. So I'm kind of like thankful that I did that when I was younger.
Yeah.
Because now I'll buy a table, I'll go to the club or something, and I'll buy a table once in a blue moon, not all the time. I'll be a little more responsible for it. Right. Granted, I've had a few instances where just lapse in judgment, and got away from me. But if I didn't do then, if I didn't do what I did if I didn't do what I did in my early 20s, and I started, and then older now with
the
now
resources,
when I have the resource,
yeah.
it'd be a lot more scarier.
Yeah, true.
So, I love like socializing with my friends, having dinners. I'm not a big boat guy. I'm not a big, I go to the gyms. I'm a big dinner and just hanging out with the guys, relationship building, man. It's because it's like a beautiful night for me is having a great conversation with my friends, going to dinners, having drinks, and then having a glass of wine or something, and then coming home, and then like if I can do that 3 times a week, it'd be amazing,
That's true.
Gym wise, I did 54D is one of the things like I keep preaching to people. It's a great like to get it's like a quick like check to get your like a what do you call it
like your detox?
I guess much like a detox like let's say you're struggling with weight loss and you're constantly gaining weight and you're eating bad.
Oh, that 54 program kind of fixes it.
That man, I was in a very bad position. Personally, I was going through a lot of personal issues in my life right after COVID. And man, my weight shot up to like 237, 238 pounds. I had my blood pressure was through the roof. I went to the hospital I don't know how many times because for blood pressure they want to give me blood pressure medicines, all this stuff. And I said, man, I'm too young for this stuff. Yeah. Enough is enough. And man, I got into that program, and in 9 weeks I dropped 33 pounds, and I was healthier than ever. So I constantly do that. I love trying new sports. Like I went with my buddy the other day to play tennis. I always wanted to play it, and I picked it up pretty decently. And I don't know how to serve, and I'm not great at it, but at least I know how to. I can sit there and do a volley for a while.
You gotta get into pickleball.
Pickleball is not a real sport. It's not.
It's the fastest growing sport, though.
Yeah, it's going to be the fastest injury prone sport too.
That's also true.
It's not a real sport.
You see, you would have more information because you're in the field. But like a lot of the premiums are going up for older people, right? Because they're playing pickleball.
Oh no, they're starting to take that into account. I mean, listen, in the insurance world right now, at least in South Florida, everything is going up. Yeah, everything. It's a hard market, and that's actually one of the reasons that drove me to sell it, like to merge with the company I did, was because
everything was going up.
Everything's going up, and it was going to make it harder for me to stay relevant if I didn't have a bigger team behind me.
Yeah, true.
So, and then you have to get creative. You have to start like figuring out, okay, insurance premiums are going to keep going up. Competition's going up. As competition is increasing, markets are reducing. So it's no longer, hey, I can save you money by switching to another carrier. It's all about, hey, are you happy with your broker? Right. If you're not happy with your broker, then, hey, I'll be your broker. But you're still going to be saying the same premium, but at least you like your broker with now, right? Would you rather be mad at a broker as someone that you're friends with or someone that you don't know? No. So, but it forces you to, challenging, macroeconomic environments, force you to, re-strategize and figure out, what other opportunities, how, differentiate, you got to expand, think outside the box. And one of the things with this company is that they had the CEO, again, like, love the guy to death. One of the most genuine people I've met. Wants to help everyone and wants to constantly expand. Yeah. And he's been trying to go to the Middle East forever. And one of the things, going back to your network, he told me this. I'm like, man, I might be able to do something for you, Saudi. So I made a phone call to somebody. Had a couple of interviews. We got it going, but for whatever reason, it fizzled out. Mm-hmm. I go on, I make a trip out there, whatever, to try to finalize a deal, but it fizzled out. Fast forward to Gumball, I'm talking to someone there from Dubai. He's like, I got you. Puts me in touch with somebody from Saudi Arabia the next night. And it looks like, if everything looks like it's going to be checking out, and we hope by beginning of 2024, we open up the office over in Riyadh, where I'm going to be part of the office. It's going to be one of my.
Congratulations, man.
So, you got to think outside the box where, and that's one of the things I always try to do is just like figure out like, okay, if everyone's here, how do I get around it? Or what do I do because you don't want to be competing with the same people.
Yeah.
It's like everyone tells me, he's like, oh, do you know this insurance broker? I go, no. And it's nothing bad. I don't want to sit there and network with other insurance brokers.
Yeah.
It's like, it's not going to benefit me. And I want to be the only insurance broker in the room. I don't want to be in the room with 10, 15 other insurance brokers. The same thing with realtors. They don't, and attorneys.
Yeah, exactly.
So
no, I had a question for you, which is like, you know how, I don't know if you've heard this, but Gary Vee talks about like, and I know you've already mentioned it, so it's kind of like redundant me asking you this, but he says, if you're an entrepreneur, you're kind of like born that way. Did you feel that way when you were younger? When you were young, were you always ambitious? Were you looking at like business moves, or maybe not business moves, but how could you add value? Like, was this always a part of who you were?
It's funny. I used to always say I wanted to go to law school if I couldn't become a baseball player, I always wanted to go to law school to become an attorney and a sports agent.
Yeah.
And why? I'm like, because I love sports.
Yeah.
And if I can never make it, become a sports agent.
Yeah.
Well, as I got older, I just realized I hate reading and studying. And my ADD for everything having to do with studies is a nightmare, So, my father, I saw my father was always the hustler in the group. He was always like after, never settled, which can be a blessing
and a curse.
Yeah. Because sometimes you take risks where, hey, it's great, but sometimes,
the risks are risky and
you lose it. Yeah. So, I always felt like I was destined for more.
Yeah.
To never be an employee, and not to knock employees. Some people are, they're two-letter employees making $1 million a year.
Yeah.
But being able to have the freedom to do and work my own schedule and travel and do what I wanted to do, is something I always wanted to strive for. Again, the whole purpose for me when I opened up my agency was I want to work for myself.
Yep.
It was just, and the whole reason is because I was working in an office and there was people in their 40s, 50s, and there was a guy in front of me that was 62 years old. And I looked at him and he's been there for 9 years, and I'm like, I can't be this guy doing this, making, selling
whatever he was making.
Struggling to make a $3,000, $4,000 commission at the end of the month. So I was like, man, I'm young enough where I can still go for the dreams. At the worst case scenario, I fail, I go back to another,
something else.
Something else, the beautiful thing about this country, I would say, is that you have the ability to be whatever you want, whenever you want, however you want. There's no one telling you that you can't be successful. A lot of the things that I see happening now in this world is everyone expects things to be handed to them. People have these ideas like, oh, they think everyone else opening up businesses is easy. Oh, I could open up a business, it's easy. But they're not really going to put in the work. Mm-hmm. And by putting in the work, meaning you got to put yourself out there for embarrassment. You got to be willing to put yourself out there for rejection, because that's the only way you're going to learn how to better yourself. That's the only way you're going to, appreciate the wins. Because if everything's handed to you, you're never going to appreciate the wins. It's all going to be expected. And when you start having expectations and you start expecting things, that's when you're going to fail.
Yeah.
Because you're never going to appreciate anything. So, the entrepreneur side, man, I see it shrinking now as far as on the business side. I see a lot of tech stuff popping up and everyone doing this stuff. But when it comes to like corporate America, and everyone expects everything to be handed to them, which is a recipe for disaster.
Yeah.
I would say I wanted to ask you, I guess, two things. How you were saying, 5 years when you started your business, looking forward. What's kind of like your mindset looking, let's say, 5 to 7 years from now?
Man, 5 to 7 years from now. Well, I'll tell you what I'll be in. So I'm part of this company now, so I can't really do much as far as like what I'm doing now.
Right.
But 5 to 7 years from now, I hope to have the office expanded to a large portion of the business coming from the Middle East, because that's where there's a lot of money going. Not have to work as hard. So I'll be 5 years, I'll be 43, 7 years, I'll be 45. I have some other, interests outside of the insurance world that I see myself, diving into. Hopefully, like I'm opening up a venue now in Wynwood.
I saw that
at the Arlo building.
Really cool.
With it's a very good I have a very good friend of mine. His name's Eric Fuller. Is a guy I've always admired his work ethic. He's my age, and he started this thing called Dayglow, which is like, you probably would know, because it's like Dayglow used to be like foam parties with glow in the dark paint. And then he partnered with some buddies, and they started a company called a music festival called Life in Color, which was like a big paint.
Yep.
Sold it, and then he went on his own. He was one of the owners of Space at one point. Sold this piece, and he started doing festivals and everything. I always told him, man, everything he touches doesn't. I'm not gonna say turns to gold, because I know he's had his failures and he's gonna hate me saying that. But everything, it's like he's one of the few people I've met in this town that has like a business one-track mind of like every dollar counts, and you can trust blindly. And this opportunity came up to open up a live concert venue. So he asked me, hey, if I wanted to be a part of something with him, and this is it. So I committed to it, and with other partners that are extremely successful in their own world. So we're opening up a live concert venue, which we hope to have open by October of next year.
Awesome.
And if that blows up to what we think it blows up, I mean, who knows, maybe do an expansion to another city where we can bring that in. But it's in 5 to 7 years, I said I wanted to retire at 35. I'm still working at 38, but I hope to just be
working when you want to work.
Working when I want to work, not when I have to work.
Yeah.
So, and maybe have 1 or 2 kids running around. See what happens.
Oh yeah, why not? Now, I had a question actually, piggybacking off of his question was, do you view life in that way? Like maybe when you were coming up, obviously, but now even like, do you put the vision boards? Do you have like a manifestation? I want to manifest this into my life, or how often do you visit that, or is it more like I'm going to focus on what I can make happen today? How do you view it? There's a lot of people that advocate for the vision boards and the manifestation, and then there's people that are just say, hey, I just go day by day.
I'm gonna grab something real quick.
Yeah.
My mom the other day when I went by the house, she pulled this out that has stored.
Yeah.
So when I opened up my company, I wrote $100,000 on a bill, and I put it up on my home office.
Yeah.
And I put it up there, and I said, one day I'm gonna make $100,000. And so when she gave it to me, she's like, remember this? I'm like, yeah, wow, I remember that. But as far as like manifestations and vision boards, I'm not gonna knock it. I've never done it.
Yeah.
That's the only.
I would say
that's the only thing I had.
That's a form of.
But that's probably more powerful than anything else.
Yeah.
Because you had one thing to look at. And
exactly.
This is what I want.
When you put, again, everyone has their own motivation. Like I'm not a big organizer.
Right.
I don't have a lot of goals in place. I try to achieve one thing before moving to the next. My view on manifestation boards, vision boards is, if you put so much stuff on there, you're going to get distracted.
Yep.
Because I want to do this, I want to do that, I want to do this. Where if you just put one thing on there and you work towards that one goal, once you achieve it, then you go on to the next. A lot of people get caught up in, I need to make money, 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 and then everything else will figure out.
Yeah.
But they don't say, how am I going to get there to make money, And when you have all these different distractions in place, it's going to just take you longer to achieve the one thing that you really want to achieve. I have a client that actually now, ironically, became, he's like a mentor to me. He told me one day, he took me to a Tiger 20, is it Tiger Global or Tiger 21? It's like a networking thing. And where in order to be in that club, you have to have a net worth of over, I think it's a liquid net worth of 10 million. And it's very exclusive. It was started by the Carlyle Group. So we went to like a luncheon, and everyone is going around. Like one of the things in those meetings is that everyone has to, like, you have CEOs of companies that are making guys worth 100, 200 million, 300 million dollars, going up and they're speaking amongst 25 people.
Yeah.
Everyone's similar levels, but they're allowed to bring a guest. I was the guest this day. And they literally, they go out, they explain their finances, they say this, this, and this, and then they go about in the room asking for their input, their advices, and whatnot. So this one guy, can't remember the business, can't remember that. He's like, well, you know, I pay this, I make this. You know, my company makes, you know, after everything's left and done, you know, I'm left with $30 million or $20 million liquid. You know, my goal is how can I get to 25 million liquid? So he goes around the room asking people for advice. You know, everyone's saying, oh, you should maybe invest in this or move your portfolio in this and that. And he gets to my client goes, so after you pay your house, you pay this, your nannies, your kids' school, your yacht, your airplane, your 2 vacation houses in the States, your house in France, all that, you're left with about 20 million liquid. And you're asking us,
just to get it 5 million.
How do you get it to 25, 30 million? He goes, is making an additional $5 million going to change your life? Is making an additional $1 million going to change your life?
Yeah.
He's like, I'm looking at you. He's like, you're 61, 62 years old. I look at a man. He says, I'm looking at a man that's, you know, not enjoying his life, and he's driven by money. He's like, why do you need so much more money? He's like, oh, because I want to be able to buy this. He's like, well, you can't buy that with the 20 million left that you're making a year. He's like, that's what you just told me is going to cost you, a couple $100,000. And so what I took from that, I was like, okay, that's a good perspective. You know, you get caught up trying to make all this money and trying to distract yourself from these goals. So he goes to me one day, he goes, you need to figure out how much money you need for the rest of your life. Right? Now, you know, sit down, and he says, and if you can find a partner, you know, to be with that you share this vision, like how much money do you need for the rest of your life? You know, it'll go a long way, because then you won't get caught on that rat race of like just buying, like spending, work, making money, and then figuring it out. So I haven't figured that out yet. I'm still trying to figure that out. And obviously, once I have kids and life, you know, life obstacles, different stages happens. But you know, that's my view on vision boards. It's like just focus on what you need on one thing. Like, if you want to be a piano player, well, you can't be a great piano player if you're focusing on being a ballet person or going to, a stock trader or something. If you want to be a great trader.
Using your example, like focusing on money. Yeah. Like if you want to be a piano player, you can't also be focusing on how can I make $100,000
exactly.
a year.
Yeah, you got to be focusing on how to make money to get these enough money to pay for your lessons, where eventually
you make the $100,000 whatever. Yeah.
You know.
No, that's a great point.
So that's my view on vision boards. I've never had one other than this dollar that I wrote $100,000 on and say I'm going to make this one day. Yeah. But I'm a big believer. Just what do you and also the big thing is setting realistic expectations. Right. You know, like, and start achieving them one by one. You start realistic expectations, and then you start getting bigger expectations, bigger goals, and you look back and you're like, 5 years from now, you're like, shit, I accomplished everything I said I was going to accomplish, and some. You know. That's
powerful.
So
it's interesting because that what you did with the bill. I don't know if you guys heard the story, the Jim Carrey story. You know check. The check. Yeah. When he started acting, I think he was on Oprah or something. He said that he got a check blank check, and he put like $1 million for service,
was like
acting services
he
rendered.
wasn't even an actor. He was getting
He was
United,
early,
all
yeah.
auditions, everything.
Yeah.
He was just getting like no acting jobs.
And he put for acting services rendered, and he just had that check there, and he would look at it every day while just trying to make it through Hollywood, and he got it. I think he got cast in. I think it was like The Mask, the movie The Mask.
Yeah.
And he got.
And it was literally for $1 million.
Yeah.
And the same exact thing. He just wrote it on the check, and he just put it there, and struggling actor in Hollywood, and he set a goal. He just set that price range, and a couple years later, he made The Mask for $1 million.
Now I know you said you didn't like studying or like the books aspect of it, but is there a part of you that reads, or are you reading like any self-help, self-development, anything? Any book that maybe added to your mindset?
I tried reading. I couldn't. So yeah, I'm gonna tell you another. Let me get like where it says like where the determination on one set goal is, right?
Yeah.
So when I got into the insurance world, like you had to take this crazy test. It was 2 months of schooling, 4 hours a day. It was a nightmare. And then you have to pass the state exam. The state exam is nearly impossible. I took it 7 times. Yeah.
Jeez.
I don't know of anyone that took it that many times.
Yeah.
I don't know of anyone that would take a state exam for any licensing.
Yeah.
But I looked at it, I was like, man, I need to get this license.
But at that time, what was your motivation? Like
the real estate market crashed. I needed to have it took me 10 years to get an associate's degree.
No, it's like imagine how many people today that even if they took the test 3 times,
that they were still
like, no, it's all done.
They'll quit. They'll quit.
I'm not doing this anymore.
And I kept on thinking. Once I get the I knew that once I got the license. The license is irrelevant as far as making money.
Yeah.
You need it to be able to make
start, yeah.
So I knew I was going to be able to do it. So like I just stuck to it. I just stuck to it, and it paid off at the end of the day.
Wow.
So it's like it's funny. A lot of people say, "Oh, how you live? Like you're always like so chill, easy going, flow. Like you don't look like you have any responsibilities or anything." It's like, man, it's like stressing yourself out is not going to resolve anything.
Changes nothing.
I had someone tell me one day, he's like, stress the things you can control, not the ones you can't. Because if it's out of your control, whether you stress, it's not going to change.
Yeah.
And if it's in your control, then it's within you to change it.
Yeah. And a lot of times people have unnecessary stress about things they've imagined anyway that don't necessarily come true at all either.
Yeah.
And they're just, they live in that constant fear of what might be stressful, and that stress never shows up.
That's what I find crazy about like anxiety, which everybody goes through it, but just because I remember catching myself personally just being like, well, I'm worried about something that hasn't even happened or might not even happen. There's 2 ways it can go, and I'm stressing about something that might not happen or it might happen anyway, and I'm stressing about it now. Why am I going to go through that twice or for no reason if it doesn't happen at all?
It's natural.
I always try to look at the worst case scenario because when you're insurance, you're risk managing, so you always got to managing risk. What's the worst case scenario that can happen? You fail? Right? You fail? Okay, you fail. Okay, then you go again. Same thing with business. Like, you want a client, you reach out to the client. Why are you going to be scared of reaching out to the client? If he says no, okay, you go on to the next client. It's the world is simple, us humans complicated.
Yeah.
It's very yes and no world. You like something, you go for it. You don't. And that's by no means am I an expert in this. By no means am I the most successful insurance. But I just got lucky in my world of what I do. I know a ton of other brokers who are much more successful, much more notoriety than I do. I'm just, I'm good in my world, in my box. And
probably not as cool as you though.
Probably not. It's funny. I went to see a client once, and I walked into a client's office, and he literally looks at me. He's like, "You're an insurance agent?" I go, "Yeah, why?" He's like, I think you're here like to sell me like a portfolio, investment portfolio, stock strategies. Like typical insurance guys are like with glasses and a tie.
10 and 9s.
10, and I'm like, man, you know, the only reason I'm wearing a jacket is because I'm meeting you for the first time. Like I typically I'm a t-shirt and joggers type of guy. Miami's too hot for that, you know?
Very true.
You know, one of the things also, like, as far as like, you're asking, like, you know, where do you think puts me there, like differentiates me, like not differentiates, but like why I'm
where you're at,
where I'm at is there's a guy that's very well known in this town and plugged into the nightlife business. And I met with him once and I go to him, how do you answer everyone's text? Like this guy is like, he's up there. He's like, he's like, I make sure I answer everyone's text messages. I have my red receipts on and I answer everyone's text messages because no matter what, whether it's good or bad, at least they can never say that they didn't reply back to them. So I used to do that a lot. And then once you start getting comfortable, you're like, whatever.
Yeah.
So recently I started doing that a lot and I've noticed that my client interaction has gone up a lot. But, you know, we're in a world, no matter what business you're in a world of service.
Yeah.
You know, especially if you own a business, you know, you build a business one customer at a time and you lose a business one customer at a time.
True.
So always be accessible, always be able to answer your client. You know, clients have a question, text message, always respond. And you say, hey, I will get back to you. I'm not perfect at it. I'm actively trying to be better at that. But as far as the coolness of me, man, I do feel like I'm always the youngest guy in the room when I go to these insurance conferences because it is an aging business. I mean, I think the average age of an insurance broker is 55 years old.
Wow.
So when I started, I was 26 going to these conferences. So they would look at me like,
who's this kid? Whose kid is this?
Exactly. It felt weird, man. And, you know, I'm fortunate I was able to forge a lot of relationships within the business that, not so much on the brokerage side, but like with carriers and underwriters that have helped me a lot along the way. And then my clients, I mean, a lot of my clients, I call them friends, you know, and I'm fortunate that I have access to a lot of very important people in this world. Not to make me seem cool or anything like that, but it's stuff that I've, took a long time to develop. Because imagine this, like imagine you're in your 50s, right? And you're worth 100, 200, $300 million. And then you're talking to a 26, 27-year-old about insuring all your shit to make sure to the point that if, God forbid, anything happens, that you're covered. Like, it's not easy. You know, it's not easy at all. I mean, even at my age, 38, it's still difficult, you know. So.
I would imagine, do they give you, like, give you like pushback or something, because being like, what is this
it's
kid
all
know
pushback.
or something?
It's all pushback. I mean, listen, it's always pushback in any sales. Whenever there's sales, whether it's insurance, cars, anything you're selling, you're always going to get pushback because the psychology of people, they're not trained to say yes. Everyone's always trained to say no and then, or what's in it for me. So you're always going to get pushback. You know, one of the things that I try to do is I try to break down that wall of
refusal.
Well, not so much like that client sales guy, and try to just make it like conversation. You know, I stopped calling people Mister after my first year in business, because once you call, if you call someone Mister, I feel in the sales position, you're already putting them in a position above you.
Yeah.
Right. So a lot of these people in that world that I deal with, they're always being called Mr. and Sir and all this stuff. They're probably tired of it.
Yeah.
You know, and how many times you meet people and say Mr. this, man, and they tell you, no, call me my first name.
Mm-hmm.
You know, that goes a long way when it comes to sales, because the minute you call them by their personal name, it kind of brings down that you're trying to sell them something. So.
That's so true, though. It's interesting because, like breaking down that, it's almost like a wall of just like, like I'm a bartender, right? So like with me, I notice it where, you know, you just want to like, if I just connect with the person just casually, like I treat them like, I'm not like, oh, hey, mister, what can I get you for, you know, I'm just like, you know, I ask for their name, like, hey, what can I, you know, and just treat them like if you're just a very casual, like from human to human. Yeah, like a buddy.
Like a human being.
And they're instantly just like, they'll sit, they're literally, it's as simple as that, like a human being, instead of like that guest, customer, consumer mindset, you know? And I've noticed that where, you know, I'm talking to them and people just feel immediately like just, they feel calm and they like, you know, then they end up like, you know how it is, like they'll talk to you and they want to vent to you and stuff like that. But that's what's helped me with that. It's just like, just treat people like in anywhere. It's just like you treat them like a human being and they just immediately, you know, I had got like an employee of the month thing there. Is at the Hard Rock, and I was sitting down with like, you know, the head of Hard Rock and all these like big guys, the new one that was going to take over Hard Rock, whatever. And I sat there and I forgot what it was. One of them asked me about like my streaming or something, because I stream as well. And I just started, and it was so weird, but like I just started explaining to all these older guys, like the head of the hotel, head of the food and beverage, about like streaming and YouTube. And they're sitting there, but I didn't like, it wasn't so formal. It's kind of like how I'm talking to you guys now. And I noticed in their faces, they were just like, and they were so engaged. They were so engaged. I kind of like cut through like the bullshit of like, you know.
Yeah, and they put you on a different, they view you from being part into like a normal human being, man.
Yeah. And it was very interesting because that was like a big moment for me of just like, oh yeah, dude, just doesn't matter where they're at, you know, just treat them like a normal human being and you'll be heard and, you know, you'll be like respected as well, I guess, you know, and appreciated both ways. It's really interesting because, yeah, I don't know. It's true. It's a weird like psychology thing, I guess, you know?
Yeah, it's, listen, at the end of the day, we're humans, right?
They say the best thing we'd love to hear is our name.
Yeah.
So it's like,
people call your name, your ears perk up. Who's calling me? You know. So, Mister. The minute someone says Mister or Mrs., it's you go on the defense. Like I think people go on the defense side of it.
It was very distant. I think people put their guard up. Is a good way to put it. And then like what you were doing, like they literally their guard came down. They were like, we're just having a conversation as if we were anywhere.
Yeah.
You know.
Yeah, it's interesting.
You know, one of the funny things too is like I laugh is that when you meet people, one of the things that annoys me is that a lot of people they act. The first thing they do is they say, "Oh, so what do you do for a living?" And I find that kind of invasive. True. Because it's like, wait, let's get to know each other first, like, you know, and then if I want to reveal, like, so I always lie, I'm a librarian or a garbage man, no, like, or something else, because it's like it's irrelevant to like, because you're trying to gauge right now, you're trying to gauge who I am on a social ladder,
how to respect you
based off of that alone.
Exactly.
It's really interesting, you
know, so I always like I just ignore it.
It's a good,
ignore it, and then eventually if I want to reveal it, I reveal it. But it's
the same thing now that we have social media too. They'll look at your followers, they'll gauge you, put you on like an immediate ranking list of like how much importance I should give this person just because of the numbers that we are socially being able to see.
You know, it's funny. Like I never really engaged a lot in social media up until like on the Gumball rally that I was on. Like everyone's asking for Instagram, and I'm like, I don't have a lot of followers. I'm not big on it. I don't really put a lot of my personal life out on Instagram. I have maybe 11 posts, and I rarely ever post pictures of myself. I always post pictures of what I want, like videos. But it's like, it's almost like it takes a lot. Like it takes the mystery. When you ask for someone's social Instagram right away, it's like it takes away the mystery of them. So I try not to post a lot on it because I still want to keep some of my personal life mystery. You know, I remember I met someone and didn't ask for her Instagram for like 4 months. So I didn't want to know anything. Just wanted to know this and it worked out for the time that it did. You know, people are. It's like it's social media. It's great for business and it's great to keeping in touch. That's how you and I keep in touch a lot because. True. I mean, we
set this whole meeting up on Instagram.
Yeah, but it's like one of those things.
I have his number too. It's text him. It's just.
It's easier. Like the one thing about good about Instagram, it's easy to keep in touch with people because you see their faces, doing it as quick versus
you stay top of mind.
Going through your phone. They say you out of sight, out of mind. Kind of diminishes 100%. If you're following each other on Instagram and see each other. Hey man, how you doing?
It's true.
I mean, shit. I just reconnected with an old buddy of mine, and I was in New York this past week. I've known him for 15 years. we hadn't had lunch, dinner in 15 years.
Damn.
Wow.
And we saw he was in New York. His dad's a client of mine, and I'm like, brother, let's have lunch.
Let's do something.
So we connected. We had a great lunch for like 2 hours. We're probably gonna connect down here in Miami.
It's awesome.
So that's where like the social media aspect, okay, good. And I realized, let me be a little more active as far as like following people and stuff like that. Because I've always like, it's like I had a friend of mine, his name's Levy. I'll actually have you guys meet with him. He's an amazing networker.
Yeah.
So he put on a huge networking event in New York. He's a realtor. And he was asking how the business going. Like, man, I got to start hitting the streets again. Like, I sold the company, I have all these expectations and these earnouts to hit. So I was like, I got to go back to networking like I was. And I'm like, I'm not, like, I don't flat out tell people what I do for a living. Like the way I look at it is like, eventually it'll come up in conversation, and I don't ask for the business always, because most of the business that I've gotten is like people know what I do and then they come to me.
It's like word of mouth.
Yeah. So I don't like put myself out there. Hey, I'm insurance. Let me do your insurance. I never did that. Well, I did do that at first, and then once I got comfortable, I figured it'll come to me. And he told me, he was like, if you want to be successful in your business, you can't be a secret agent. He's like, you're good at what you do. People know you, but you can't be a secret agent anymore. You got to go back out there. You got to let everybody know, hey, you're doing this, you're doing that, you're doing that. And that was like 2 weeks ago. He told me. I was like, man. I was like,
revisit the social strategy.
I was like, shit, man. The thing is, I don't like. When I was younger, like my late 20s, early 30s, I had like the energy and the bandwidth. I wanted to network with everyone. Hey, dinner, we'll go to dinner, we'll go here, we'll go there, do this all this stuff. We're gonna go live.
See, I feel like you personally, you could get away with being who you are and continuing to further your success. Just because I feel like when you meet people, regardless of your social media or whatever, like you automatically, at least in our case, like you became a really close friend.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Like somebody we could reach out to, have conversations, and do stuff like this, and it doesn't feel like I have to make an ask, if that makes sense. It was literally like I reached out to them, hey, you wanna hop on the podcast? We'd love to have a guest. He's our first guest for the show, But like it's like I feel like your vibe can carry on as the person who's that mysterious person. Like I feel like there's power in that today because everybody's so eager to share. Yeah. And when you're doing the opposite, that actually like I forgot what I was reading. It was like low key life is now the the most interesting life or whatever, because like the stage of like where everybody's sharing everything, it's gotten too much, I feel, for a lot of people now. So where people are now, even like most people are backtracking on how much they're sharing. Like I remember when I was in college, I used to post every single day. Like I wouldn't have a reason to post. I wouldn't even have a picture to post. I'll post like an older picture just as like, oh, I'm posting. And I remember like at that time Gary Vee was like post. But like it's like one of those things where you're like, you to a point now where I'm like, I just want to share stuff that I want to look back as like a yearbook in a way and be like, okay, I did all of these things. Like it's like I can look back and be like, okay, I can these memories. And that's like before it was just like I'm just posting. And I thought I was doing like this, great social endeavor of just, sharing everything, but that's not the case. So I feel like now, even for you, just what you do and how you interact with people. Nowadays, I see people on social media all the time. It's like private profile, like 300, 400 people, but like they got exotics. They're like talking about hypercars and stuff like that, and they're hidden. You have no idea who these people are.
And it's not that, again, it's not that I, have this very influential, high profile individual. It's just like I'm very like my circle is my circle. Yeah. And I don't I network with a lot of people, but I network with people go to networking events and they try to talk to as many people as possible. Yeah. I go to a networking event and I try to find the one person that I want to talk to that will benefit the whole thing. Yeah. And it's that's how I kind of operate. I don't want the world to know. I've never had my Instagram page on public. It's I don't want the world to know what I'm doing with my life, because everyone starts judging. Yeah. Everyone starts judging, and then you start getting all this negative energy, and then it's like you start doing all these explanations. Like the less people know about your personal life, the better you're gonna be at. So
That's for sure, dude. People will. I mean, you see it all the time, whether it's on Twitter,
relationships, everything. Like
everything.
people put it on Instagram that they have this amazing, beautiful relationship, and then when it falls
It's a
apart,
facade.
you look like an idiot.
That's the most interesting thing, man. I mean, I've had conversations with people where you look at their Instagram, you're like, oh, this guy's got to like figure it out, dude. This guy is like, damn. And then when you talk to them, they're like, fuck, dude, I don't know what I'm doing. I'm like, wait, but and it's very interesting, and that's one of the main things that I feel like with even starting this too is just like when we would talk about it, I realized how many people are going through the same thing. Yeah. And nobody wants to talk about it, of just trying to figure it out. And it's so common, but nobody wants to talk about it. Everybody's on Instagram trying to portray like a highlight reel of, I got it figured out,
That's not life.
That's the thing with Miami too, man. I mean, like
that's true.
I see it a lot in Miami more than anywhere else. I mean, like I'm fortunate enough to be connected with the people that I need to be connected with in Miami to gain access to anything that I need to gain access to. Yeah. What everyone tries to gain access to in Miami, I'm fortunate that
you're there.
I know who to call, who to reach out. And it's one of the things because I take care of people.
Yep.
And even if I can, I try to connect them with other people. But there's so many people coming to Miami, and it's like I call it the city of $10 billionaires. Yeah. They make a buck and they think they got it all figured out. Yeah. And the thing is, as quickly as you can make it in this town, you'll lose it too. You'll lose it. It'll eat you up faster than you can think. Right. And to be able to, the people that survive in this town, and especially in the industry, like if you want to deal with a high net worth space, you got to be real, you got to be sociable, and you got to be able to be serviceable and be humble about it. Like the people going around saying, oh, I deal with this person, I know this person, this is this, this, and this. They ain't gonna last. They ain't gonna last, and you can see right through that facade.
Yeah.
Those are easy to spot for sure.
The loudest person in the room is usually the weakest person.
Yeah, that kills me, man. Like whenever I'm talking to someone, you just know right away. They're just kind of like, yeah, and you just read through the BS. I'm like, all right, like I don't know. It's hard to. You got to appreciate when you do find that connection, that genuine, authentic connection.
Even the people that are kind of loud about it on social media, like I'm not knocking anybody, but there's a lot of people that will like put their, sometimes they'll put their degrees and stuff in their bio, but they're like 29, 30, 31. And it's like, what have you done with the degree? Or even like in the entrepreneurial space, there'll be people that'll be like, oh, made my first million at 18, but then you're 27, but like that's still in your bio. Yeah. Like there's a disconnect to me because like, have you achieved nothing since 18, you know what I mean? Like, why is that your only highlight that you're portraying? Or is that all you're worth, even in a way? Right. Is you just,
it's funny. Like, I had a link to an article when I sold my company on my Instagram, and after like 3 months, I took it down. But I'm like, that's what's next, right?
Yeah.
I mean, I still have a post there, but it's
no facts.
The thing what you're saying about like people with they're getting a degree at 30 or 35, I think that's more impressive than people getting a degree in their 20s, because the fact that you went back to school in your 30s and 40s,
more responsibilities, have kids, maybe your spouse, it's way different.
It's impressive, and it's 100%. Like, again, it goes back to what I was saying too. Is like the beautiful thing about this country, you can do whatever you want, whenever you want, however you want. It doesn't matter your age. So if you want to be a doctor at 60 after being an attorney for 20 years, you can go do that. It's just doing it. And then you just got to stop blaming people for everything else, for your current situation.
True.
In this country, I mean, you see on the news every day, the media is passing blame on everyone and everything for everything that we're in right now. Yeah. And no one takes accountability. No one cares. No, at the end of the day, no one cares about you. Yeah. They don't care about your situation. They may care, okay, I'm sorry you're doing this, but no one cares about it. Yeah. Like, if you want to be a millionaire, no one's going to do it for you. You got to do it yourself. If you want to buy that car, no one's going to buy it for you. Well, unless you're an Instagram model and you find a sugar daddy, that's, But as far as the majority of the world, you got to get off your ass and work. Put your head down and stop worrying, block out the noise, worrying about it, stop worrying about everybody else and just worry about yourself, Take the, I had a slogan that says, take the leap. Eventually the net will appear.
Yeah.
That's
true.
So, I mean, hearing your story, how you're saying that year 5, when things were still kind of rocky, you were just being at a boxing gym and then like meeting with a friend that you haven't seen. Hey, you should meet with my dad, and like that kind of like snowballing from there into everything else. It's just if you do your part, I feel like the universe will just kind of like try to guide you in the right path in a way, you know?
You know, one of the hardest things to do in sales is walking away from business, especially if you know you're going to make a lot of money on the deal. You know, I've turned down deals like clients that they wanted me to do gray stuff area, and I'm like, when shit hits the fan, everyone has amnesia. So and then you're going to be the one left holding the bag. So if you just work honestly and diligently and like the way you're supposed to do it, you know, the rewards and you'll reap the benefit of it, you know, and don't get caught up. It's easy, especially living in Miami, it's easy to get caught up in the lifestyle, say, I need to make this fast buck because I need to get this stuff, blah, 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 blah. Majority of the people with that you're seeing that are posting that all over the internet, they're doing something shady. I mean, I deal in that world with the people with the multi-million dollar houses. You know, I deal with them daily. I have a Rolodex of 6 billionaires on my phone that I can call right now and pick up the phone. Not one of them post pictures of their Ferraris and their yachts and all this stuff.
So true.
No. So it just gives you a little perspective of, you know, of how people, you know, operate in this town.
That's the one thing I find interesting, like with society, is kind of like what you were saying, right? Like the first thing they ask you is, oh, so what do you do for a living, right? Or when you walk into a place and, you know, a lot of the billionaires that you see, you have no idea who. When you see them, they can walk by you in the street, you have no idea who they are. They're probably wearing jeans or casual shirt. And I just find it interesting with society how like we're so caught up in trying to look the part instead of just being the part, you know. And I've seen stuff where, especially nowadays, like especially like YouTubers or something, they're like millionaires. And I saw one. He went to like a dealer, and the dealer treated him like crap. And it was for like a video he was doing, and the salesman treated him like crap because he looked at this kid in his 20s, and he was.
I'm sure it was staged though, because I'll tell you
it could
the story. It's probably staged, yeah.
Possibility. Yeah. But I think the concept, I'm sure that's happened before.
Oh, it has.
Like, you know what I mean?
Course.
Like where
100%.
you have a kid walk into a place, and you know they look at you immediately, and they're like, oh, this kid's not like this kid doesn't have money to be here, you know. And
Yeah, I have a funny story with that. I had a client that was referred to me, and the attorney told me he's a very successful developer in the islands. I go to his house. He had a big ass house in Gables Estates. So I'm like, man, he's like, you got to put on a suit. I'm like, so I put on a suit.
Right.
I walk in, I drive up to his house, massive castle of a house, and there's a guy like walking out of the garage that looks like he was just a landscaper, cutting the grass, whatever. Are you here? Can I help you? Yeah, I'm here to meet with such and such. He's like, all right, let me go get him for you. Guy goes inside the house. I walk to the front of the door, opens the door. He's like, hey man, how you doing? I'm like, what? He's like, yeah, it's me. I'm like,
wow.
We'll never know.
Yeah.
Like, so it's like,
that's the thing, man. You never know who's who, because it's like what they say: treat the janitor the same way you treat like a CEO. Because at the end of the day, you never know, you know. And
be human, I think, has been a good theme of what you've been talking about too. Anthony, we won't take too much of your time. Do you have any more questions?
I guess before we wrap it up, just what would be your like final advice for anyone, maybe just trying to start a business or something like that?
I was going to one up it because I remember you said you had a buddy who said he has 2 pieces of advice. So I was going to be like, what are your 2 pieces? Like if all you could give to people would be this 2-piece advice, maybe people want to be in the same shoes as you one day, go through the experiences, maybe not necessarily the same way, because I know your story is very unique, but just people want to be successful, I guess.
You know, one of the things that I'm not going to break it down to, I'm going to just speak on it, is don't get caught up with what everyone else is saying about what you want to do. If you have a vision and you have a goal that you want to achieve, don't tell many people about it. Just go about it your own way, because there's going to be a lot of detractors. There's going to be a lot of people telling you not to do it. You know, I'm going to repeat what I said. You know, you got to trust the process. You have to see it through. The only way to be successful is on your own will, and don't rely on anyone else. You know, I don't have anyone in my family as a client. Anyone. I didn't rely on them for anything. No one in my industry, no one in my family is in the insurance industry. everything I went out and got on my own, it was very, 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 trying and stuff because you're constantly putting yourself out there.
Yeah.
So to be successful is you gotta trust yourself, trust your vision, set a goal, an attainable goal, and go after it. Go after it, and if your life depended on it, because no one's gonna help you, and no one's gonna feel sorry for you. So attack it like if it's the last thing on your, the last meal in your life, and just go after it, and then reap the rewards. And if you fail, you know what? The people that are gonna laugh at you aren't your friends, and if they laugh, and you're gonna look back and say, I went after it myself, and be proud of it. That's what I would advise, and don't say no. Don't say no to a goal that you just because it seems unattainable. Just go after it. Go after it. Like the Gumball thing, I said, man, it's gonna be a heavy one, but I'll figure it out. And I did it, and it was an amazing experience. So that's my advice.
Damn, I love that. This is the best first episode.
Yeah,
for real.
Seriously, man, we really appreciate you
appreciate
coming
your
Guys,
time.
on.
want me to jump on anything else, man?
100%.
Awesome. Thank you,
And
man.
then if you want to tell them where your social media or anything is, or where they can find you, anything.
I don't. My social media is just my Instagram name is ANTRDZ. Nothing
Perfect.
crazy, but
No, 100%.
but yeah, man.
Anthony's a real one.
I appreciate you, brother.
Appreciate you, bro. Thank you so much for doing this,
Another
man.
kicks, man.
And have-